As President-elect Trump's cabinet picks continue to roll in, many are wondering if they'll be approved by the Senate. But there's another concern on the minds of Americans. How will a second Trump term affect everyday prices like housing costs, groceries, and even daycare? Here to help us understand more is personal finance reporter at MarketWatch, Erin Lang. Hannah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you recently wrote a piece on this very topic, but you zeroed in on Trump's immigration policy, saying experts in the field think that the crackdown could lead to rising costs. So what did you learn as you were reporting on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, much has been said about Donald Trump's trade policy and the impact that tariffs could have on prices. But, increasingly, I've heard from economists that his immigration plans could pose a threat to the economy as well. Of course, because of the role that undocumented workers play in the job market and the ways that they support the work that Americans do and American businesses as well. The concern is that mass deportations like those that Donald Trump has proposed could create labor shortages, much like what we saw during the pandemic, that could slow down hiring and production and even lead to higher prices on some of the essentials that Americans have struggled to afford over the past few years, like housing and groceries.
Okay, so I do want to talk more about mass deportation, which of course is a hot talking point right now. We're taking a look at a previous administration. Department of Homeland Security report shows former President Obama in 2013 actually deported more than 438,000 people. About 44% were migrants who were arrested at the border. Now, this was marked as the highest number in deportations in a single year. However, in one of your reports, it says that President-elect Trump is looking to deport 15 to 20 million people while he's in office. So my first question for you, is that even possible? And what would be some of the drawbacks? You were talking about that if a plan like this does play out.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a big question that a lot of businesses and a lot of economists have when we're thinking about Trump's proposed mass deportation policy. He has thrown out those figures like 15 or 20 million immigrants that he could target with this plan. Recent estimates show that there are only about 12 million undocumented immigrants that live within the United States. So it seems like these numbers, some of these estimates are just incongruous with the reality of immigration statistics that are out there. But if this administration is able to significantly ramp up deportations and top those Obama-era numbers, what I've heard from economists and from folks in the business world is it could be a serious disruption to a lot of industries that rely on immigrant labor, both documented and undocumented. So think of industries like agriculture, food processing, construction, childcare, leisure and hospitality. Immigrants make up a significant portion of the workforce there. And we have a very recent example in the pandemic of labor shortages, helping push prices upward. So I think that is one of the major concerns here, is that removing a ton of those workers very rapidly could have that kind of impact.
And of course, we're still in a Biden presidency right now until January. Do you think the fear of even the conversation surrounding mass deportations can have an effect on us financially here for those who feel like they need to leave before Trump even gets into office?
Yeah, I think I've heard some of that from the economists I've spoken to as well, that, of course, the impact of a policy like this, of mass deportation, is not necessarily just on the immigrants that are targeted for enforcement, but, on a much larger population as well, and immigrants more generally. I think it helps create a culture of fear that could have a ripple effect and create these kind of impacts on the labor market that could be detrimental. And I think it's important to note as well, when we're having this conversation, that immigration is a big part of why the job market has been so resilient over the past year in the face of higher interest rates and slightly slower economic growth. So I think that's an important piece to remember as well.
All right, another thing people were talking about are these tariffs that President-elect Trump wants to put on these countries that import things here to America. So what's the bigger threat to our economy? Would you say it's the immigration issues that we're facing at the border, or tariffs that President-elect Trump wants to put on?
Yeah, I think that there's a vigorous debate happening about that in the economic community right now, and I've heard from both sides of it. I think when it comes to the consumer, tariffs might have perhaps a more direct impact on the prices of consumer goods. But I think that in the investment community, a lot of eyes are on the job market right now, and whether or not we'll be able to keep that unemployment rate low, pull off that soft landing. And I think when you talk about a policy like this, that could jeopardize jeopardize the kind of delicate state of balance the labor market is in right now. That could have a significant impact on, say, the future of the job market, but also the future of interest rates and monetary policy as well.
And there's a lot of studies around about what jobs a lot of undocumented workers do here in America. It could be a lot from the service industry, hotel industry, different things like that. So let's just say, if some of those people under President Trump get deported, is it easy to fill jobs like that with documented immigrants or just Americans who are born here?
Yeah, I've discussed this, and one of the arguments for mass deportations or an immigration crackdown more broadly is that if we remove immigrants from the labor force, that those types of jobs become more available, and that we might be able to fill them with American groups of workers that have seen declining rates of labor force participation. So working age men have seen their labor force participation rate decline somewhat steadily for years, and there's hope that maybe we could bring some of those folks into the labor market via an immigration crackdown. But I spoke to an economist who studied the impact of deportation specifically in the Bush and Obama era on the job market. And what she told me is that that's not necessarily what happens, that it's really difficult for businesses to fill these roles, and that when we see immigrants removed from the labor force, that we actually see demand for what they call complementary jobs decrease alongside it. So even roles that traditionally American-born workers tend to fill. I think that that's important to keep in mind as well. What she told me point blank is that mass deportations would make the job market worse for the average American worker as well.
All right. And my last question for you, Hannah, as someone who focuses on personal finance, how should Americans plan to watch their money as we go from the Biden administration to a second Trump term?
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to point out that, there's still a ton of uncertainty in how these policies are going to be crafted, how they're going to be carried out. There's still so much we don't know about the scale and the severity of things like tariffs or mass deportation. So I think it's really important not to panic and to not, panic purchase any types of goods or fret about the future of your finances. We're still learning things day by day, and I think just stay on top of these policies and how they shape up, and keep your head about you when it comes to your finances.
Actually, before we go, I do want to ask you one last question. When you say stay on top of these policies, how quickly into President-elect Trump's term do you believe he can, start doing these mass deportation plan that he plans to do, as well as the tariffs on the other countries? How quickly into the presidency could we see that?
Yeah, I mean, these are two of Trump's kind of flagship policies, and he's indicated that he intends to act on them very quickly. In the case of mass deportations, this is something that it certainly seems he could use, his authority as president to get started on this. He's talked about, using the military to act on this. So I think, again, we'll have to see. There's a lot we don't know, but he seems very keen to move forward on the issue of immigration, and he's surrounded himself with people heading into his inauguration that are eager to do so as well. So we could see action on that quite quickly. In regards to tariffs, that's also an area in which Donald Trump could use his authority kind of unilaterally to set those in place without much obstruction from Congress. That being said, if we see price impacts from those tariffs, that could take months, several months maybe, to work its way down to the prices that you see on store shelves.
All right, Hannah Erin Lang, personal finance reporter at MarketWatch. Thanks for joining us on Cheddar.
Thank you so much for having me.